They called her Deadweight. Too small, too quiet, too forgettable. But 3 seconds later, the entire training yard froze because the code on her wrist wasn't just a tattoo. It was a ghost designation buried in files no recruit was ever supposed to see. Fort Halcyon was supposed to break people like her. The mountain base in Colorado was more fortress than school, a place whispered about in special forces circles as the crucible where candidates either forged steel or snapped in silence. Every wall, every drill, every punishment was designed to strip recruits to their core. And that first morning, Lyra Monroe looked like the kind of candidate who wouldn't last an hour. Before we dive deeper into Fort Halcyon, sound off in the comments. Soldier, where are you watching from? Drop your city and country. Let's see how far this unit reaches. She stood at formation, uniform hanging loose, boots a half-size too big. A rucksack twice her weight leaned against her leg. The squad towered over her men with marathon lungs, women with arms like braided rope, each carrying themselves like they'd already won wars. Lyra didn't look at them. She didn't look at anyone. The first laugh came from Holt, a broad-shouldered joker in her squad. She can't even carry a pack. He barked, nudging his buddy Vega. The others chuckled, the sound rolling down the line. Sergeant Rourke, their squad leader, didn't bother to intervene. In his eyes, she was already invisible. Then came the mistake. A junior officer, smirking, grabbed her wrist like he meant to drag her forward as an example. Let's see what you're hiding. Deadweight? He yanked her sleeve up. The laughter stopped. Black ink curved across pale skin, clean. Deliberate, unmistakable Echo 17. The yard went silent, as if someone had cut the air itself. Boots stopped shifting, jokes died in throats. Even Rourke's jaw locked tight. Nobody spoke. Nobody breathed. A low thrum filled the valley. Rotors. A military helicopter swooped down, blades chopping the cold mountain air. Dust whipped across the formation as the chopper settled, kicking gravel against boots. Every recruit snapped their eyes forward as the door swung open. A tall man stepped out, starched uniform, bars and ribbons that gleamed like fire. General Arlen Kane. Commander of Operations whispered about, but never confirmed. He didn't glance at the squad, didn't glance at Rourke. His eyes locked straight on Lyra. When he spoke, his voice cut through the roar of the blades like steel on glass. Whoever bears this code answers only to Phantom Command. For a long moment, the only sound was the helicopter winding down. Lyra didn't flinch, didn't bow, didn't explain. She simply lowered her sleeve back over the mark, her face unreadable, and turned away. The recruits who had mocked her minutes earlier stood stiff, eyes on the dirt. They weren't laughing anymore. And as Lyra walked back toward the barracks, the air on base shifted heavier, sharper, like everyone was holding their breath. What none of them knew was that this was only the beginning, because Fort Halcyon had just discovered its most dangerous secret in years, and Lyra Monroe wasn't done hiding. Fort Halcyon didn't care about codes, tattoos, or rumors of Phantom Command. At least not on the surface. In the barracks, recruits were measured by muscle, speed, and the ability to crush anyone weaker. And in those first brutal weeks, Lyra Monroe was marked for destruction. Sergeant Rourke, the brick-jawed squad leader, wasted no time driving the point home. On her first logistics drill, he tossed her a canteen like it was charity. Stay out of the way. Monroe, don't slow us down. The words weren't orders, they were dismissal. Her squad mates followed his lead. Holt, loud and broad-shouldered, found every chance to shoulder-check her. Vega, lean and wiry, taunted with sly whispers about how long before she washed out. Soren, sarcastic to the bone, cracked jokes about making her the squad's coffee runner. And Nyla, whose sharp tongue cut deeper than any fist, smiled sweetly as she spat insults under her breath. But humiliation reached its peak in the mess hall. The recruits had just shoveled down watery stew when Holt slapped his tray down beside Lyra and grinned. "Hey, Deadweight, let's hear it. The soldier's creed. Stand up and give us your best." The chant spread fast. "Yeah, make her read it." Out loud, Rourke didn't intervene. He leaned back, arms folded, watching. Lyra rose slowly, spine straight, eyes forward. She recited the words without hesitation, her voice steady but soft. The creed was supposed to inspire unity, strength, loyalty, in her mouth. It carried weight. But before the second line was finished, the squad roared with laughter, banging trays, mimicking her tone. Someone shouted, "Maybe Phantom Command wants a choir girl." The humiliation cut deep, but her expression never cracked. When she sat back down, silent. The mocking grew louder, but no one noticed how her hands were clenched so tightly the knuckles whitened. Later that week came the silent drill, a test designed to measure discipline. Recruits had to cross a pitch-black forest without making a sound. Twigs snapped, boots dragged, muffled curses spilled from lips. One by one, squads failed, except Lyra. She moved like shadow, each step measured, her breathing steady. At one point, an instructor's weapon jammed a faint metallic click. Without hesitation, Lyra's hand brushed the rifle, fixing the bolt in silence. The instructor froze, stunned. She had helped him without a word, without being seen. When the squads reassembled, every candidate looked winded, sweaty, humiliated. Lyra stood at the edge of her line, calm and untouched. Instructor Cross scribbled something in his notebook, his gaze narrowing. "She doesn't move like a recruit." He muttered, "She moves like she's been here before." And that whispered observation carried further than any insult. Still, by the time lights went out in the barracks, Holt and Vega were already plotting the next way to break her, because in their eyes, nothing was more dangerous than a ghost who refused to shatter. But Fort Halcyon had more than humiliations waiting. Something far older, carved into its walls, was about to surface, and Lyra was the only one who could see it. Fort Halcyon was built like a prison-high walls, iron gates, watchtowers. But even in a place designed to erase individuality, some marks never faded. During a late-night equipment check, Lyra's gaze caught on a cracked plaster wall in the barracks. 3 jagged slashes, carved deep, deliberate. The others dismissed it as vandalism, but Lyra recognized it instantly, the Phantom Protocol symbol, an operation that officially never existed. Her chest tightened. Someone had left that mark here. Someone who knew. The days pressed harder. Field exercises exposed cracks in her squad's arrogance. During a night march, Holt, always loud, always boasting about his navigation, marched them straight into a radar trap. Lyra whispered a warning, pointing at the false frequency flashing on his GPS. Holt laughed until the alarm shrieked red. The squad froze. Command aborted the mission. No one admitted she saved them. But Colonel Drake Vaynor, observing from the tree line, saw everything. His pen slowed deliberately across his notebook, Echo 17 signature confirmed. Then came the minefield drill. Holt again barreled forward. Ignoring faint glints of wire in the mud, Lyra yanked him back a second before his boot would have tripped the charge. "It's rigged," she said quietly. Instructor Cross stepped in, face like stone. "That move just saved half your squad." The laughter dried up. But humiliation found other doors. Vega sneered about her faded uniform. Nyla joked Phantom Command must have lowered standards. Soren, never missing a punchline, cracked that she was here for choir practice. Every insult. Lyra met with silence, and every silence was followed by proof. when the squad fumbled with a broken radio. She repaired it in under a minute, coordinates snapping back to life. Cross's gaze lingered. "Where'd you learn that?" She shrugged. Picked it up. That night, Colonel Vayner sat alone in his office. He keyed open a classified file, hands deliberate, not trembling, but slower than usual. A grainy photo filled the screen, a younger Lyra, eyes the same, calm and unreadable. Header text burned across the top, Phantom Protocol 007, kill count 312 confirmed. Status presumed KIA. Vaynor exhaled once. "You disappeared, but you didn't die." The next morning, during an urban assault briefing, Lyra raised her hand in unusual breach of her silence. "Your east flank's exposed," she said. The instructor frowned. Checked, then froze. She was right. The room went quiet. No jeers this time, only the heavy weight of eyes that suddenly realized she saw things they couldn't. Whispers spread. "She's not who she says she is. No recruit shoots like that. No recruit moves like that." Lyra gave them nothing back. Not in her walk, not in her stare. She carried her truth like a concealed weapon, and Halcyon itself stone. Wire. Shadows was beginning to whisper with her. The truth wouldn't stay buried much longer. The test that would rip the mask off was already waiting at the range. They saved the sniper trial for daylight, as if sunlight could make the truth easier to swallow. The Halcyon range stretched wide, targets on steel tracks jerking and weaving in mountain wind. Recruits clustered at the red line, buzzing with bravado. Holt flexed. Vega cracked jokes. Naylor smirked. "This one's for real shooters." Sergeant Rourke barked the rules. 5 moving targets, varying distance, no warm-ups, timer stops on the last hit. His voice carried fail here. "And you were done." Lyra stepped forward. Not called, not asked, just forward. Silence spread. Instructor Cross lowered his pen. Colonel Vayner watched from the shade. Unreadable. She selected a rifle with the ease of memory. Bolt, chamber, scope, cheek weld movement smooth. Practiced, almost too practiced for a recruit. The buzzer shrieked. Targets launched. One zipped cross range. Another broke high and back. The third darted at an impossible angle. The fourth and fifth overlapped, then split like they were daring her to chase. She didn't. Crack, 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 5 rounds. No hesitation. No wasted motion. The target stilled. Each one struck dead center. The timer froze at 6 seconds. No one clapped. No one even breathed. Applause would have been safer than what they were, feeling fear. General Arlen Kane was already there. No rotor thunder, no staged arrival. This time he chose silence because true authority doesn't need spectacle. He stepped to Lyra's side, eyes finding her wrist. "Monroe," he said, low but carrying. "Show me." She pulled back her sleeve. Black ink Echo 17. The recruits stiffened as if the letters had weight. Holt, Vega. Neela, all suddenly statues. Then another figure emerged. An older man, hair silver. Uniform softened by years. Grayson. He stopped at the bench, eyes narrowing like he'd seen a ghost. From his pocket, he drew a worn dog tag, a single number stamped deep 007. "I knew a Viper once," he said. Voice gravel and memory. Fallujah Ridge. She carried men out when the map said no one lived. Same mark, same eyes. Lyra didn't take the tag. She didn't need to. Grayson set it down, the metal catching the sun before it cooled in the dust. Colonel Vayner closed his notebook without writing. Some pages didn't need more words. General Kane turned to the squad. "She is not your rumor. She is not your mascot. She is an asset under observation." The word asset struck like a verdict. Lyra laid the rifle down, chamber clear, and walked past them all. No smirk, no triumph, just calm steps, Boots pressing into gravel. Behind the berms, a sound gathered low, steady, different, not the usual bass chopper. Finer, sharper, a whispering blade. Something was coming, and when it landed, it wouldn't just test them, it would rewrite the chain of command. The valley learned a new kind of silence when the Ravenhawk 9 descended matte black. Rotors whispering instead of roaring. Dust spiraled in slow coils, clinging to the recruits' boots as if the ground itself didn't want to let go. General Arlen Kane stepped forward with a sealed directive in one hand. He didn't need to open it. Authority carried in his voice alone. "By order of Phantom Command," he said, every syllable cutting through the mountain air. "Echo 17 is reinstated, effective immediately." The recruits who had laughed at her now stood like carved stone. Holt's jaw tightened. Vega shifted his weight. Nyla's chin lifted, not in defiance, but in surrender. Even Sergeant Rourke saluted, not perfect, but honest. Lyra didn't smile. She didn't need to. She adjusted her sleeve back over the code and walked toward the Ravenhawk as the formation parted. Silence followed her, heavier than applause. "Monroe," a voice cracked through the stillness. "Lieutenant Rowan." The quiet one, clutching a folded letter worn soft at the edges. "My brother, Operation Iron Dagger." The report never named who carried him out of the minefield, but he did. He called her 17. Lyra paused, looked at him with eyes steady as steel. "Tell him he wasn't alone," she said. None of them were. Rowan's throat tightened, the letter trembling in his hands. Sometimes gratitude is louder than cheers. Consequences came quietly, like shadows crossing paper. Holt's ranger slot disappeared. Vega's transfer stalled with a red stamp pending review. Nyla opened her inbox to a single line. "Leadership is how you treat the quiet ones." And Soren, once the loudest, found silence clinging to him like a sentence he couldn't joke away. Colonel Vaynor locked the Phantom Protocol file back in its drawer and wrote 3 words on the cabinet. "Lip keep shut." Some truths were safer sealed. Instructor Cross brushed his hand over the slashed mark on the barracks wall. He didn't paint over it. Not yet. Symbols had their own weight. Lyra reached the Ravenhawk. The crew chief nodded her aboard. Respect wordless, but real. Inside, the cabin smelled of oil and leather, the air humming with readiness. Kane followed last. Pausing at the door, he looked back at Fort Halcyon, the crucible, the scar, the rumor, and then at her. No orders, no questions, just recognition. The Ravenhawk lifted. Dust swirled. The recruits craned their necks, watching a black silhouette carve across the sky until it became nothing more than a streak against the morning. Rowan still held the letter. Rourke stood beside him. "She'll come back?" Rowan asked. Rourke shook his head. "Ghosts don't come back," he said softly. "They show up when you need them, up in the cabin." The headset crackled. "Echo 17, stand by for tasking." Lyra opened her eyes. The mountains fell away. The sky widened like a choice. "Send it," she said. And Fort Halcyon was left with silence. A faint boot print in the dust, and a lesson no one dared forget. Strength doesn't always shout. Sometimes it walks through your life like a shadow and leaves only when you finally see it. Ghosts show up when you need them, and so do you, if you believe these stories deserve to be told. Subscribe to Quiet Valor Stories and keep the mission alive.